Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. You have successfully and ever so wisely tuned in here today to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. I'm your host, the one, the only, the ever so beloved Todd Huff. It is my pleasure to be here today. You know, I want to talk today, as we are going through at this particular point in time, a bit of what I would consider kind of the first time that it appears that the Democrat Party is engaged in kind of an autopsy, if you will, for lack of a better term, regarding what happened to their 2024 election chances, and they're beginning, as they've gone through these stages of grief here, they're beginning to at least ask some of these questions, or at least pretend like they're trying to solve them. And I want to talk about that today. Because the American people have been abused by the Democrat Party and the media, and these books, which I talked a little bit about yesterday, these books that are coming out now that are talking about President Biden's complete lack of mental cognition during the campaign and all this blame that's being laid at the foot of Joseph Robinette bribery. Of course, some can be laid there, but there's much, much more blame to go around. They're trying to give an explanation. They're trying to get out in front of this, because as people examine the root causes for the failure of the Democrat Party, if there are they want to put up these examples of trying to appear to be objective and analytical now, even though it's way too late. It's completely useless. They're trying to profit off of this as well. That discussion we had yesterday about Jake Tepper lit my fuse. This guy is absolutely unbelievable to me. And I've got sound bites. I've got, excerpts, I guess, of his stupid book, which I hope no one here buys. And I'm a free market capitalist. I believe in freedom. I hope not a single one of you buys his idiotic book. He knew these things while Biden was in office. He could have told us these things about Biden's lack of mental acuity, cognition, all this stuff. He didn't. Now he wants to tell you to cover his tracks. Now he wants to tell you to make a profit. And I think that's despicable. And I think people who behave like that have completely, 100%, violated the trust of the people that they're talking with. And I hope more and more people awaken to this absolute insanity. That's what I want to talk about today. It's really a post-mortem analysis here as to what's going on. And I think it's important that we understand, that we not lose track in this little game that they're playing here as to who really is to blame for the situation we find ourselves in here as a nation. And we'll get to that in, of course, due course here throughout the program today. Friends, let me start though by asking you, if you spend more time taking care of things like your automobile, your car, your truck, if you do more home maintenance than you do physical maintenance on your physical body, taking care of ourselves. You know, oftentimes we do that. It's easy to put the little sticker in the corner of the windshield that says I have to change my oil in 90 days or whatever it is after so many miles, after so many months. I go in, I change it, I rotate the tires, I do that sort of stuff with my vehicles. But how many of us follow a regimen for taking care of things like our heart? That's where Soul Tea comes in. Soul Tea is an all-natural product. I take it. And this product has been scientifically proven. Science has spoken. It has been established firmly that this product can help lower your cholesterol. It's good for your heart. It's very safe to take. It's not a drug. And so I take it, and I've got a website that you can go to if you'd like to try it. Excuse me. It's Soltea.com, Soltea. That's how you spell Soltea, Soltea.com. And if you use my name, Todd, during the checkout process, you're going to get 50% off your first 3-month supply. It's not an expensive regimen to begin with, but you're going to get 50% off and free shipping. So it's very, very minimal risk. And as I've said, I take it, and I think you should consider taking it as well. In fact, if I'm being honest, I wished I would have taken this earlier. But nonetheless, we can't go back in time. Soltea.com, Soltea, promo code Todd is how you get that. Folks, your heart deserves better. This is one way to give it what it needs. All right, so let's start here. I actually want to start by talking, or I want to play this clip. This is Chuck Schumer. He's on, where is he on? He's on some, it doesn't matter where he was on. You know, that's the reality. It doesn't matter. Cassie Hunt, however I say this, CNN. It doesn't matter where he's on because they're all the same stinking place. They're all the same as far as their political leanings. They're all the same as wanting to force feed a narrative to the people watching or listening to their stupid programs and content. These folks are all the same. They're all leftist posing as journalists. They are make-believe journalists in my estimation. These folks cannot be trusted. The same is true for Chuck Schumer, the guest on this program. It doesn't matter if it's Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, these folks, whoever, I mean, down the line, they have been coached by the same people behind the scenes. They're being given the same keywords and the same talking points by the same consultants in the Democratic Party's ruling class to force or to trick or to gaslight the American people. This is who these folks are. So, Democratic politician on with Democratic journalist, make-believe journalist. It doesn't matter the names. It's the same. It's all the same. So, he's on here with Ms. Hunt, Chuck Schumer is, and she's now starting to suddenly, amazingly, have a little bit of curiosity here. They're finally curious about the 2024 election. And she asks him, after, of course, we talked yesterday about Jake Tapper, his book, and some of the sound bites. I got another montage I can play. But after this stuff has hit the news and this book is being promoted and so forth, she, the make-believe journalist here, is asking Chuck Schumer, the make-believe legislator. I mean, he's a real legislator, but he's playing a game here. They're always playing a game of smoke and mirrors. They're trying to find something that sticks with the American people, that helps the Democrat Party, that hurts the Republican Party. And they're desperate. They're flailing. They are flailing. And now there's this. And they're doing this make-believe post-mortem after the 2024 election. So they've totally given up. If you go back in time, you know that they gave up on supporting and defending Joseph Robinette bribery at the end of, well, it was really August of last year. Some people even defended him through that debate for about a week or so, and they realized we can't do this any longer. He's lost core support. Maybe some people didn't get the memo. Some people did get the memo and immediately said we can't. It's time for someone else to run because this guy can't complete a sentence on the debate stage. Some of them didn't get that memo, and it took them some time. Or they took their cues from the other people who were in the innermost circle of this propaganda machine. And so finally everybody got the memo, and Kamala was coronated as the Democrat Party's, I guess, savior, I suppose. Even though she was, wasn't elected, wasn't nominated by the voters. They don't care, by the way. The Democratic Party could care two hoots less about, or couldn't care two hoots about their constituents. They don't care about it. They care about power. They care about winning. And just as in 2020, Biden was selected because the power brokers in the party thought that he gave them the best chance to beat Trump, but also the best chance to beat Bernie in the primary process. That's what they did in 2020. And in 2024, they decided that his effectiveness, his usefulness had come to an end abruptly. All they were trying to do was get him through the finish line in November. And if you think about it, they got pretty darn close. And let me ask you this as I say that. If he would have given even a 20% better debate performance, even if he didn't, he's going to be stumbling and bumbling around. We knew that he did that in 2020. But let's say he didn't have a complete meltdown. It's clear that they would have stood by this guy. There's no doubt in my mind. So let's say he just somehow tiptoed through the tulips there and was able to get to the finish line, get the nomination in August at the Democratic National Convention. There's no way in the world that we would be talking about any of this now. If he went through and won the nomination and somehow won re-election, which I don't think was going to happen anyway, but who knows? Who knows in today's world? But if he was able to pull that off, do you think that there would be a book now? I mean, it would have been the same series of events that would have happened, the same thing that Jake Tapper has written about in his dumb little book. Do you think that we would be talking about this? Do you think Chuck Schumer would be on here with Ms. Hunt at CNN having to answer this question? This is the question she poses to him. Did you really not have any idea that Biden was not fit to serve a second term? Right? Because this is the argument. They were playing games back. Even now, they want you to think they're really doing an objective post-mortem analysis on the Biden campaign, his presidency. But in reality, what they're trying to do is cover their tracks. They're trying to make it look like they're doing due diligence. Some people, again, got the memo later than others. Some people defended Biden longer than others. And it's a painful and embarrassing process for these folks because some of them are on record as saying how mentally fit and quick-witted and just, how much of a genius this guy was. Biden was, if you listen to these folks, the most brilliant person, the most quick-witted, the most intellectually intimidating person on the face of the planet. And now we got these books coming out where they're admitting what we all knew all along. If you listen to this program, we knew this in 2020. We knew that Biden wasn't mentally fit then. They knew it then. Make no mistake. They knew it then. They didn't care. They didn't care that they were putting your country at risk. They didn't care that the person making the decisions in the Oval Office was going to be someone who had no abilities, no mental fitness whatsoever to complete the task at hand. They knew this. They didn't care. They had no concern. They care about one thing, and that is power. They didn't care that you weren't going to be able to hold the person accountable that was making these decisions. They didn't care that they knew they were going to have to use the auto pen, allegedly, and have someone making the decisions as to what the auto pen would be used for that wasn't a person that you elected, that you voted for. Of course, none of you voted for this crazy administration, or very few of you did. Anyway, so none of this would have been happening had Biden tiptoed through that first debate, got through the debate, got to the general election. And if he would have won 100%, I can tell you with 1,000,000% certainty that we wouldn't be having any of this discussion right now. None of it. Now, I pause and give you a caveat because they would have known, the Democrat Party would have known that he couldn't have gone for 4 more years, even if he tiptoed through the tulips and got to election victory in 2024. They knew he wasn't going to have 4 years of no problems. And so at some point, they would have begun to say, it's time for Kamala Harris to take the reins here, for Biden to resign. Talk of enforcing, the constitutional amendment whereby his cabinet can say he's no longer fit to serve. That certainly would have happened. But we wouldn't have been talking about any of these shenanigans where they were hiding and covering up what was really happening in the White House in the last term of Joseph Robinette bribery. So that's important to note. But this is where we are. So here's Chuck Schumer on with Ms. Cassie or Casey Hunt. I don't know how you pronounce it. I don't care, to be honest with you. No disrespect. These folks, they're all the same to me. So here we go. She has him on. She asks him this question. I want you to listen to this answer and this back and forth, because this is, while they're not doing this for legitimate purposes to really flush out the problems in Washington, D.C. and the prior administration or hold people accountable, they're doing this just to check off boxes to say, look, we're an objective media. But it still demonstrates, even though it's just a game to them, it still demonstrates just how absurd and ridiculous some of the things they were saying about Biden in his defense were, even at the time that this stuff was going on last summer. So that being said, here is Chuck Schumer on with Ms. Hunt at CNN.
I really do want to ask you about something that has been breaking out of CNN. Our Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson have written a book called Original Sin, and they call it a cover-up of Biden's health and his cognition and his fitness, quite frankly, to be president of the United States. You sat next to Biden in the Oval Office February 27th, 2024, just a handful of months before the president took that debate stage. And it was later reported that you and other Democratic leaders were talking before the debate about having a plan. You and Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama. I understand you later denied that ever happened. But I am curious, I'm interested to know whether the man that you saw sitting there on that couch on that day, you were in there, you saw him up close and personal. Did you really not have any idea that he was not fit to serve a second term?
Casey, we're looking forward. We have the largest Medicaid cut in front of us. We have the whole federal
you're
government
facing all of this because you lost a presidential election. And is that not Joe Biden's responsibility for deciding to run again?
We're looking forward.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Senator Chuck Schumer, I know you got to go. I appreciate your time today.
That was insightful, wasn't it?
See you soon, I hope. Thank you.
So Casey, I found out there finally. Casey says, that's it. You're not going to say anything else about this, Senator Schumer? There's not anything you want to elaborate on? You don't want to say whether or not he was fit at the time? You know, you all got together and there were discussions about having a game plan, but now you're acting as though, you acted as though he was totally fit and totally cool to have him be our president. And is that, is that still where you stand? He doesn't answer. We're looking forward. Casey, we're dealing with Medicaid cuts. We're saving the American people, blah, blah, blah. This is, of course, how they do this, how they deal with this. It's also a complete and ridiculous lie. So you're forced to accept one of two things. One, you can say that Chuck Schumer has the discretion, that he has the decision-making ability of, a low-level insect here, or he's hiding something. Because there's no way, there is zero way, and I've got some excerpts. I've read this a while ago. George Clooney, leftist actor George Clooney, flew into the White House and, was meeting. I don't know if he was there with other people, but he had an encounter with Joseph Robinette bribery. This was, I believe, I want to say it was in 2022. I think I'll get to that. Actually, I'll get to that in a moment. But the bottom line in that encounter is that it happened a while ago, and now we're just now hearing about it, which of course raises questions. Why would you not let the American people know? Not only is the guy that's the Democrat Party nominee not capable of being president again, he's not capable of being president now. And I remember talking about that on this program. I was one of the only people that I remember, because I remember someone, Vivek Ramaswamy, who I respect a lot, he said that we shouldn't even been talking about that because the last thing we wanted strategically was for Kamala Harris to assume the role of president before she actually, had to go through the election, because then she would technically be the incumbent. I get all that, but I also get that we had a nation to run and that the guy that was running the show was completely and utterly lost. These folks all knew that. They hid that from you. Now they're pretending as though they're digging into this to figure out why the Biden administration hid it from us, or hid it from them in the media, or the Democrat Party in general. Which, let that sink in. That should be enough to dramatically tarnish the Democrat Party. They lied to us. They hid things from us. They talk about being so transparent and being a group of people that are fighting for the American people, fighting for transparency, fighting for government to be effectively run, or whatever they're out there talking about. This is not what they do, though. It's not what they do at all. These folks are absolutely deceivers, manipulators, liars, gaslighters. They knew this. They got together and decided, we're not going to tell the American people. We're not going to tell the Democrat Party voters. We're not going to give the Democrat Party voters, think about that. They knew Biden wasn't fit to be president. They still didn't let anyone effectively challenge him, truly. I know we had Marianne Williamson out there saying some crazy things, but she never had any chance. The bottom line here is that they didn't really have a primary. They said, here's your guy, Biden, and then when they realized we can't keep this guy's condition hidden from the people anymore, now we've got to give them another candidate. Force another candidate upon them. That would have been 3 straight elections. Hillary was chosen by the DNC. They pulled the strings for her in 2016. Biden was thrust upon the American people in 2020 with a few phone calls when they asked people to drop out so Biden could win and avoid a contested convention. And now Kamala in 2024. It's anything but Democratic, my friends. I've got to take a timeout. Quick timeout. Back here in just a minute. They're engaging in all these shenanigans in order to gaslight you, to gaslight the Democrat Party anyway, into believing that they didn't hide these things from them. They don't want the full consequences of doing the things that they have done to the American people. They don't, or to the Democrat Party voters in particular. They don't want the full consequence of that. But that, we have to settle there for a moment and just come to that realization. They really should come to that realization. It wasn't, and this is another thing. Look, Chuck Schumer didn't want to answer the question there that was offered up by Casey Hunt, or whatever her name is. And the truth is, if Chuck Schumer really wanted to be fair in this situation, he would have said, what about you, Casey? What about the people at CNN? What about Jake Tapper? Where was Jake Tapper on all of these issues when this actually mattered? If they were really having a come to Jesus moment here, a moment where they were just going to, just level with the American people, Chuck Schumer would have said, look, I went to a meeting with the guy, and it was obvious he wasn't fit to serve, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do because this was, we knew this was a possibility, but we didn't think, we were getting close to Election Day. We thought we could sneak this guy past again, but it didn't work out that way. And so I didn't know what to do. I pretended like he was healthy. You guys in the media had no curiosity. Boy, I would have loved this if this was the exchange and the conversation and the narrative of the day. If the media suddenly woke up and decided to be honest and forthcoming, we've been defending a guy who can't tie his shoes in the morning. We've been defending a guy that can't walk and chew gum at the same time. We've been defending a guy who has no idea where he is. Let me read to you. I don't know if it's from the book or just a conversation that's come up in the, as this book has been being released. Here it is. So this is from the New Yorker. From the New Yorker here. First of all, let me go back here. This thing's scrolling on me. So this is it says how Joe Biden handed the presidency to Donald Trump by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. And this is the one that has, so this is a quote from Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. It says this: Biden had framed his entire presidency as a pitched battle to prevent Trump from returning to the Oval Office. By not relinquishing power and refusing to be honest with himself and the country about his decline, he guaranteed it. That's what they say. Now let me pump the brakes here, as they say. And let me say to you that I actually think of all the people, if we're talking about 2024, I think of all the people that we want to point blame at, I think the last, I'm not saying he's without blame, but if he's as incoherent as I believe he is, Joe Biden is one of the last people to blame here. Where was Dr. Jill? Where was Biden's staff? Where were the people who were running the Democrat Party? Where were the people in the Democrat Party who were meeting with this guy on a regular basis? Where were they? They were the ones that should have been leveling with the media. Where was the media, by the way? Again, I shared yesterday, I'm a guy with a talk show. I have a microphone. I do this show. We've done it while we travel in Eagle One on occasion. We have done it from the home studio, from radio studios. We don't have a team of production professionals. We don't have a team of people that are, writing scripts and questions and researching and all this sort of stuff. I do this on my own. We have a small team here, but I do this stuff on my own. And yet I could simply observe as a human being and say, that guy in the White House, something's wrong. He's fallen down 53 times. He can't stand up straddling a bicycle that's virtually stationary. He can't finish a sentence. He has to be shown where to stand when talking with people. And as you're about to find here, I'm going to go to this next. This is David Plouffe. He said he was a political advisor who helped run Kamala's campaign. He said, we got so screwed by Biden as a party, he totally effed us up, is what he said. But wait a minute, why are you're pointing the fingers at a guy? Now you've got people that are abusing people who are suffering from cognitive decline. Because I'm well outside your circle, David. I'm not one of you all in the sense that I don't share your delusional worldview in politics. I'm not in the meetings. I've never sat down with Biden. I just observed. The people in this audience, we just observed. And we observed a guy that they tried to keep hidden from us. They hid him in 2020 from the American people. They definitely were hiding him in 2024. The guy's day ended at 2 or 2:30, many days. He didn't do much of anything. He didn't do any impromptu speeches, press conferences, media appearances, interviews, none of this stuff. Trump's out there everywhere he goes. The media is following him. Trump is a media machine, and they want to compare Trump's cognitive abilities to Biden's. It's as though they've realized, okay, the cat's out of the bag on Biden. We've got nothing else left to lose. Let's acknowledge it was a problem, and then let's also now say, well, let's not repeat it with Trump as though it's just age. This is not just age. There are plenty of people who have lots of mental acuity and fitness about themselves as they age. This is not the case with Biden. Trump and Biden are night and day different than one another as far as their cognition is concerned, and lots of their ideas as well. I'm not even saying you have to like Trump's ideas, but Trump is clearly capable of going in and talking about what he thinks and answering questions and dealing with the very, very hostile media. Biden had to have pictures of journalists alongside their names, the questions that they were going to ask, undoubtedly coached about these things. The people that were handling Biden didn't want to put him out there at all. They knew they had to put him out there some, and so they tried to put as many, it's like when you go bowling. You can put the bumpers, right? The bumpers along the lane so the ball doesn't go into the, what do you call those? The alley? No. That's the alleys where you roll the ball. Just where, it gets out of the lane. I don't know what you call it. The gutter. There you go. The gutter balls. I throw some gutter balls sometimes. But you can play put the bumpers out to where there are no gutters. It takes the gutters out of play. That's what they were trying to do. They were trying to have this guy have no possibility for stumbling into the gutters. But even with the gutters covered, he managed to fall flat on his face, both literally and figuratively. It was an abomination. This is someone else, a prominent Democratic strategist who publicly defended Joe Biden, said it was an abomination. He stole an election from the Democratic Party. He stole it from the American people. This is crazy talk. But what this is trying to serve a couple of purposes. Number one, it's trying to give you a little bit of smoke and mirrors here to say we did an analysis. Biden was the problem. Biden was the problem. But the people that were closest to Biden were also the problem. This includes the media, the politicians, the people in his cabinet, the people on his team, the people who were meeting with this guy regularly. They lied to you. They hid that from you. They didn't want you to know this. This should be firmly understood. Firmly understood. And they don't want to be caught with that. They don't want to be branded as having done that to their voters and so forth. But that's the reality of the situation. They should pay a heck of a price for doing this. This is unspeakable. This is unacceptable. Nobody should allow this to happen. I thought this was where the quote was from George Clooney, the little story from George Clooney. It's not. It's in another thing that I'll pull up here in a moment, which I'll get to after the break. But they lied to us. They deceived us. When we're looking at what's wrong with this country politically, culturally, morally, we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge that one of the problems was that we have people who are running what I call the 7 pillars of propaganda, or they're just the pillars of our society: government, media, academia, who are lying to us, deceiving us, trying to trick us into believing a narrative, trying to cover their own backside at the expense of whatever it costs you is fine. They don't care. They do not care. And yet they pretend that they do. The jig is up. This has to stop. These people are dangerous. They are deceivers. They have made themselves known to us. They have to be held accountable. Don't let this make pretend little expose of how Biden hid it from them steal the true narrative, which is they hid it from you. They hid it from you, my friends. They hid it from all of us. Quick time out. Of course, those of us who paid attention could see it, but they tried to make sure that we didn't. Be back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. So I found this excerpt here. George Clooney's, I'm not going to read what it says here. Basically, he can't believe it moment with Joe Biden. Again, this is promoting this stupid book by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, where they're trying to make you believe that the only people that are responsible for you and the American people, well, you knew because you paid attention and you listened to this program, but the American people, the Democrats in particular, they want the Democrats to blame Biden for simply being selfish and not doing what was in the best interest of the party and the country, and he couldn't step back and see it for what it was. He hid this from us, blah, blah, blah. Of course, if there was a media that paid any attention, had any curiosity whatsoever, none of this would have ever happened. But I'm going to read an excerpt here from this. This is from the New Yorker. Let me just read it. This could be from the book and it's cited in the New Yorker, but I'm reading it in the New Yorker. Biden hobbled out from around the corner. Clooney, talking about George Clooney, knew that the president had just arrived from the G7 Leaders Summit in Italy that morning and might be tired, but blank, it says here. Oh, crap is what I'll say. He wasn't expecting this. The president appeared severely diminished, as if he'd aged a decade since Clooney last saw him in December 2022. He was taking tiny steps, and an aide seemed to be guiding him by the arm. Again, you might be wondering, why wouldn't anyone have told us this? Right? But of course, we knew this was happening. Thank you for being here, the president said to guests as he shuffled past them. See how they write this now? They didn't write any of this when the guy was still their nominee. They didn't write any of this until it didn't matter. There were no consequences, direct consequences of an upcoming election that this could impact people's choices on. Thank you for being here, Clooney. That's Biden still saying that. Clooney felt a knot form in his stomach as the president approached him. Biden looked at him. Thank you for being here, he said. Thank you for being here. Apparently they had programmed him that day to just say thank you for being here. Those are my words, not the articles. Here's going back to the what actually the excerpt is. You know, George, the assisting aide, told the president, gently reminding him who he was in front of. Yeah, the president said to one of the most recognizable men in the world, the host of this lucrative fundraiser. Thank you for being here. So he's supposedly at a fundraiser that Clooney's hosting, doesn't recognize him as being George Clooney. Anyway, Clooney then says, according to this, "Hi, Mr. President. How are you?" the president replied. "How was your trip?" Clooney asked. "It was fine," the president said. It seemed clear that the president had not recognized Clooney. George Clooney, the aide clarified for the president. "Oh, yeah," Biden said. "Hi, George." Clooney was shaken to his core, my friend, just shaken to his core. The president hadn't recognized him, a man he had known for years. Clooney had expressed concern about Biden's health before. A White House aide had told him a few months before that they were working on getting the president to take longer steps when he walked, but obviously the problem went way beyond his gait. This was much graver. This was the president of the United States? That was the question. We're supposed to believe now that it doesn't matter, now when books have to be sold, now when they realize we have to have someone to blame, they're going to blame poor old Biden. They're going to blame Biden for all of this. And they also want you to think that it was just physical. That's the other thing they want you to believe about this. Wasn't mental. Now they'll accept that it was mental at some point. Mental fitness and all of that. That's where this is going to end up, because this isn't going to satisfy. This is stupid. Why would you not tell the American people this? Why would you continue to campaign and fundraise for a guy who had to shuffle to get around, who didn't recognize you as the guy that was responsible for organizing this fundraiser? Why would you do this? I mean, in my mind, this guy has just admitted, George Clooney and everyone else that was close to Biden in this process have admitted to us that they should never be trusted again. But of course, I'm not saying to not be forgiving, right? But we should be wise. Forgiveness means I'm not going to be the one to step in and be the final judge and try to get even with you. I'm not saying anyone try to get even with Clooney or the Democrats or anything like that. I'm saying let us know who they are. By their fruit, they will be known. Their fruit is fruit of deception. Their fruit is fruit of gaslighting. their fruit is not to be trusted. These folks are operating in darkness. These are not good, forthcoming people. And there should be consequences for that. There should be consequences from that. I hope that they come to the point where they realize the error of their ways. I hope that they come to the point where they can say that they will turn and repent from that kind of behavior. But that's not my decision. That's their choice. What I'm saying is that there should be consequences for this. We should know. We should know when the media tells us something in the future, when George Clooney tells us something in the future about whatever it is, climate change or whatever else, that we're probably not getting the full story or a very, very unbiased version of it. Gotta go. SDG.